The second I saw both Edison and Finn waiting in that glass conference room, I knew it wasn't going to be a regular Monday. Edison, the head of HR with the fake smile energy, and Finn, the new CIO with the ego of a man who's never written a line of code in his life. They didn't even offer me coffee, just gestured to the seat like I was about to be interrogated. The blinds were only halfway drawn, so people could still see inside. Real subtle, real professional. Edison slid a piece of paper across the table like we were in some budget spy movie. Blurry black and white printout, grainy as hell. But I recognized it instantly. Me walking into Vega's building last Thursday night. Hoodie, backpack, not even looking at the camera. "Matt," Edison started, like we were old friends, "we've received concerns about outside consulting. That violates your employment contract." I didn't blink, didn't ask who sent it or how they got it. I knew what this was. They'd already made the call. They were just giving themselves a justification. Then Finn leaned forward, hands folded like he was about to drop some wisdom. "We have zero tolerance for conflict of interest." Smug, like he'd just caught me stealing trade secrets, not offering a second opinion on firewall logic during my own weekend. I didn't give them the meltdown they were hoping for. No panic, no denial. I looked straight at them and said, "You're right, I should focus on one job." Their faces twitched, confused. Like, check the drive labeled handoff. Everything's in there. That was a lie. Half the docs were months behind because I hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks. But they'd never know that until the fires started. Security showed up 5 minutes later. Escort duty. I walked through the open floor with 2 guys flanking me like I was about to set off an alarm. People turned, stared. A couple whispered. No one said a word to me, not even Arlo. Especially not Arlo. Quick note, before we go further, share which city or country you're watching from. The elevator ride was dead silent. When the doors opened, I walked out without looking back. I'd already done more for that company than they ever did for me. I hit the parking lot, started my truck, and just sat there for a second. No yelling, no panic. Just this weird, empty quiet. After 3 years of bleeding for that company, it was over in 15 minutes. 3 years ago, Arlo pitched me the dream. Full-scale cybersecurity operation, team of 5, modern tools, high priority from the top. "You'll be building something from the ground up," he said. "Total ownership." I'd just wrapped a contract in Dallas. Burned out, but hungry for something real. So I moved to Indianapolis, signed on, and got to work. The first few weeks felt legit. I hired 2 solid engineers, started mapping the infrastructure. But by month 4, one guy bailed for better pay in Chicago. Then corporate laid the other off during a restructuring. I asked Arlo when we'd backfill. He said, "Just hold tight until next quarter. Budget's tight right now." Next quarter became the next, and then the next. By the end of year 1, it was just me. Meanwhile, client count tripled, threat volume spiked, system complexity doubled, and I became the whole damn department. No backup, no handoff, no slack. I worked through every holiday, Easter, Thanksgiving, even Christmas. Slept in the office twice during a ransomware scare. Patched 0-day exploits from my phone during my sister's wedding, and every time I asked for help, Arlo hit me with the same crap. "You're doing amazing, Matt. We know we're asking a lot. Once revenue stabilizes, you'll be the first hire." They gave me praise instead of people, smiles instead of support. At first, I believed the delay excuses. I thought, okay, they're scrappy, maybe just struggling. But then I'd see the execs show up in new cars. I'd hear about bonuses. Arlo got a lake house. All while, I lived off cold coffee and alerts at 2 a.m. The moment it really cracked was last winter. 3-day incident, malware injection targeting one of our largest clients. I caught it just in time, traced the source, deployed custom patches, and rebuilt the logs by hand. Didn't sleep for 72 hours, saved their asses. Monday morning, Edison handed me a card. "Appreciation from the team," he said, like he was doing me a favor. It was a $200 Visa gift card, with a sticky note that said, "Nice save." By Friday, the CEO's name was in the press. Some award, something about visionary leadership. He got $1 million bonus. Public record. That was when I stopped believing any of the lies. I stopped asking for help. Stopped trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. I kept things running just enough to avoid full disaster. But I stopped going above and beyond. I wasn't burned out. I was set on fire and told to smile about it. Once I forwarded a staffing plan to Arlo with hard numbers, risk thresholds, workload analysis, projected client growth. I didn't even get a reply. He just sent me a thumbs up emoji in Slack. That was the level of respect. That was the culture. One night, around 1 in the morning, I was still in the office. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. I stood up from my desk and looked out over the dark floor. Empty chairs, powered down monitors, dead silence. And it hit me. This was never about building a team. They didn't want a team. They wanted a shield. Me. That was the moment I stopped defending them. They could sink or swim. I'd keep things barely patched, but the second I had a better out, I was done. Funny thing is, none of them saw it coming. Not Arlo, not Edison, not even Finn, with all his talk about visibility. They thought I'd stay forever, just because I hadn't quit yet. I didn't quit that night, but I did buy a plane ticket. The next day, I flew to Boston for a cybersecurity conference. Supposed to be for professional development, but I needed the distance. Needed to remember what it felt like to be in a room where people actually gave a damn. My talk was on adaptive defense frameworks, dry topic, but the room stayed packed. Afterwards, during the Q&A, this woman stood up, confident, sharp-eyed, no ego in her tone. She asked 3 questions, each better than the last. Relevant, tactical, sharp. That was Vega. She introduced herself after the session. Head of security at a mid-sized competitor. No fake small talk, just, your breakdown on privilege escalation controls was dead on. You free to grab coffee? We talked for 2 hours, mostly shop talk, but there was something different about her. No corporate Polish. No pretending. She'd built her team from scratch, knew the trenches, and more importantly, she listened. Before we wrapped up, she said, "Look, I've got a project. Advisory only. Weekends, nothing shady. Interested?" I said I'd think about it. By the time my flight landed back in Indy, I'd already said yes. Every weekend for the next 2 months, I reviewed architecture docs, ran logic checks, flagged issues early. No operations, no hands-on keys, just insight. And they paid me more per weekend than I made all week at my full-time job. I didn't tell anyone, not because I thought it was wrong, because I knew how my company played. Arlo didn't want results. He wanted obedience. Edison didn't want truth. He wanted control. If they found out I was giving someone else my brainpower on a Saturday, they'd call it betrayal, even if it wasn't. I checked the NDA 3 times. No conflicts, no overlaps, no violation of policy. I was clean. But truth doesn't matter when someone's out to make a point. Last Thursday, I parked in a visitor lot near Vega's building. Same truck I've had for 10 years. Someone recognized it. Someone snapped a photo, probably a junior analyst who didn't even know my name. Probably thought they were protecting the brand. They sent it to Edison, maybe to Arlo, maybe to both. Monday morning, blinds half closed, badge on the table, security at my shoulder. Tuesday morning, Vega called, said her board had approved the offer. Full-time, triple my old salary, full team under me, full authority. I asked, "You sure you're good with the blowback?" She laughed. "I don't hire cowards, Matt. I hire people who deliver." By the end of the day, I had a signed contract, a start date, and more respect in one call than I'd gotten in 3 years at the last place. I kept thinking about that moment in the conference room when Finn said, "We have 0 tolerance for conflict of interest." Nah, what they really had was 0 tolerance for anyone building an exit ramp. They fired me like they were cutting out a tumor, but all they did was free up my time. By Monday afternoon, I knew exactly where the first cracks would hit. Credential refresh cycles. Every 90 days, system-wide. Totally automated. If you didn't count the manual override, I had to run first to keep legacy apps from breaking. I'd warned them a dozen times, documented it, flagged it, emailed Arlo directly. No one fixed it. No one listened. Tuesday morning, I grabbed coffee and slid into my seat at Hion, my second official day. I logged in, and while my new team was chatting through sprint tasks, my old inbox was blowing up. Notifications from legacy monitoring dashboards I still had access to, system lag climbing, auth errors spiking, logs overflowing into overflow. They didn't rotate keys properly. Their backup agent was out of date. One by one, the system started choking, and I didn't lift a finger. Midday Tuesday, first voicemail from Arlo. "Hey Matt, quick question. Just wondering if you remember how the credential cycles wired into the reporting tool." "Sure, Arlo," I remembered. "I built the damn wiring by hand at 2 a.m. 2 years ago because you wouldn't approve another staff hire. Then came Edison. Matt, we've hit some unexpected behavior in a few workflows. Nothing urgent, but if I have a minute, the same Edison who had security escort me out like I was a thief now wanted a favor? By Wednesday, I had 7 missed calls. One was from a number I didn't recognize. Executive Suite. Probably trying to find anyone, who still knew how their own infrastructure worked. I ignored every single one. That morning, our High-On team was elbows deep in a resilience test when Vega walked in holding her phone. Guess who's having a fun day? She flipped the screen toward me. It was a screenshot of an internal memo from my old company. Priority 1 incident escalation, full staff on alert. I just shrugged. I warned them. They chose not to listen. She grinned and walked out. Nothing more needed to be said. That afternoon, I joined a planning call with my new crew. 8 people, all sharp, no dead weight, no silence when problems came up. We talked through workload balancing, shared gaps, documented next steps. Nobody dumped tasks on one person. Nobody pretended things weren't their job. It felt like breathing again, like walking out of a storm into clean air. Back at my old place, though, I knew what was coming next. That patch I never documented, the DNS redirect loop that only resolved if you cleared a cached port binding manually, that one was going to bite them before Friday. I hadn't hidden it. I just hadn't held their hand, and they never bothered to learn. By end of day, I saw another Slack message screenshot Vega pulled from one of her industry group chats. Someone from my old company was asking if anyone had experience migrating legacy load balancers without interrupting real-time data feeds. Too late. That load balancer? It was my patchwork Frankenstein project. No one else even knew how it worked. I'd kept it alive through sheer force of will. And now, it was eating them alive. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just kept working with a team that actually respected the job. Thursday morning, Vega walked into my office with her phone in one hand and coffee in the other. She didn't smile this time. "You're gonna love this," she said, setting the phone down on my desk. "Your old company's threatening legal action." I raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" "Sabotage," she said flatly. "Apparently their lawyers think you intentionally took down half their network." I actually laughed, out loud. Couldn't help it. "My NDA's clean," I said. "Everything they need was in the documentation I gave them. They just never read it." Vega smirked. "Exactly what I told them when their outside counsel called this morning. You're fine. But we can't get the credential system stable. Reporting's dead. Half the clients can't log in. I didn't even bother to fake sympathy. I told you this would happen." I know, he said quickly. "Look, we just need you to walk us through it. Just tell us where to start." I paused, almost amused at how fast the arrogance had drained out of him. "The recovery protocol exists," I said. "It's all in the disaster plan I submitted last year." Silence. "Where exactly?" he asked. "Filed under low priority," I said, and hung up. Around 5 that evening, I got another call. Unknown number again, but this one felt different. I answered. "Matt," a voice said. Deep, deliberate. The kind of tone people use when they're used to being obeyed. "This is Warren Callahan, chairman of the board." Of course it was. The guy who'd never said a word to me when I worked there suddenly remembered my name. "I understand we're having some technical difficulties," he said carefully. "And from what I gather, you're the only one who can resolve them." "Seems that way," I said. He exhaled through his nose. "What would it take to bring you back temporarily, just to stabilize things?" I didn't hesitate. $50,000 an hour, 4-hour minimum, paid up front. He chuckled like he thought I was joking. "Let's be serious." "I am," I said. "You want my time? That's the rate." He went quiet again. I could almost hear him calculating how much each minute of this call was costing the company in downtime. "And," I added, "I want an apology. Public or private, doesn't matter. But it's coming from you and Arlo both. I also want my entire old team positions reinstated. Full rehiring, no pay caps. And while we're at it, full restructuring authority for the department." "That's a lot," he said slowly. "So is losing your top 5 clients in 1 week." He didn't argue after that. Just said, "Email the terms to legal. You'll have payment confirmation within the hour." 2 hours later, Vega forwarded the deposit notice. Wired. Every cent up front. She leaned on the doorframe of my office, eyebrows raised. "So, you're really gonna do it?" "Oh, I'm gonna do it," I said, closing my laptop. "Just not the way they expect." She smiled. "That's why I hired you." I grabbed my jacket and headed for the exit. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking out under escort. I was walking out on my own terms. By the time I got back to my desk, the payment had landed. 50 grand per hour, 4-hour minimum, non-refundable. And just like I asked, everything was in writing. Apology letters from both Arlo and the chairman, full staff reinstatement, and documented authority for restructuring. Legal signed off, I was covered. But I wasn't logging in to be their savior. I was logging in to be their reckoning. At 10 on the dot, I joined the bridge call. I didn't say a word at first, just listened. It was chaos. People talking over each other. One guy clearly didn't know how to mute himself. Another was trying to explain a memory leak without understanding what the memory was leaking into. Every minute they talked, the clock ticked, and I got paid. "Matt, can you hear us?" someone finally asked. "Yeah," I said. "You ready to shut up and listen?" Dead quiet. Not even keyboard clicks. I pulled up the architecture diagram I'd left them last year, ignored of course, and shared my screen. "Open your load balancer configs," I said. "You're gonna see 2 entries marked Legacy Support A and B. You're gonna want to delete both, right?" Someone said yes. "Don't touch them," I snapped. "Those are keeping your DNS from fully collapsing." A beat of silence. Then a nervous voice. Copy that." Over the next 4 hours, I spoon-fed every step like it was freshman-level IT. "Open terminal, not PowerShell, terminal. Stop guessing and read the file path I just gave you. No, the loopback address isn't your issue. The issue is that you cloned my patch and didn't test it." They were helpless. Not because they were dumb, but because no one ever gave them the chance to learn. I'd been the wall holding everything up, and now they were standing in the rubble, trying to act like they built the house. 2 hours in, Arlo finally spoke. I hadn't heard his voice since the panic call. "Matt," he said, "before you go any further, I just want to say, I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve." I cut him off. "This isn't about feelings. It's about uptime." We kept going. By hour 4, systems were finally stable. Not healthy, not secure, but stable. Firewalls were holding. Auth errors stopped flooding the logs. Monitoring tools blinked back to life. One of the junior engineers, someone I'd never met, finally broke the silence. "Is it safe now?" "For now," I said, "but barely." I stared into my screen, all their initials floating in tiny bubbles on the video call, waiting for me to bless them with good news. They looked exhausted, beaten. So I gave them the truth. "You all need to understand something," I said. "The biggest risk in this system isn't a bad line of code or a missing patch. It's leadership that ignores warnings. This didn't happen overnight. It happened because every time I raised a flag, they smiled and looked away. Silence. Long and heavy. That kind that means they're finally hearing what should have been obvious all along. And still, too late. I clicked, leave call. Didn't wait for thanks. The second I shut that call, I felt it, like something cracked open for good. Back at Hion, Vega was already waiting outside my office with a whiteboard and 2 mugs of coffee. She slid one across my desk and said, "You up for something bigger?" I raised an eyebrow. "Define bigger." 17 inbound requests in 48 hours, she said, all asking for advisory support. Real work, no babysitting. She flipped the whiteboard around. "We build it. A dedicated security consulting division. You lead it." I stared at the list. Company names, sectors, notes on each lead. And they weren't small players. Healthcare, finance, retail, big money, big needs. "Give me a day," I said. She grinned. "Take 2, but I already know you won't." She was right. I spent that night drafting a full proposal. Services, staffing model, pricing tiers, growth projections. Clean, focused, no fluff. I pitched it to leadership the next morning. They greenlit it on the spot. No delays, no red tape. Just, "When do we start?" We started that afternoon. We posted roles, pulled in candidates from my old network, screened fast, hired faster. People wanted in because they saw what we were building wasn't another padded bureaucracy. It was real work, smart tools, and leadership that listened. Within 2 weeks, our team went from 8 to 20. By the end of the month, 3 Fortune 100s had signed on. And we weren't begging for contracts. They were coming to us. That's when the emails started. First was Arlo. Subject line, "Open to reconnecting." I didn't even open it. Straight to trash. Next came the board chair. Full name, formal greeting. Said he was willing to discuss a permanent return package. I deleted it before I finished reading. A few days later, I was speaking at another industry event. Nothing major, just a panel about secure scaling for growth companies. Afterward, a woman in a navy blazer walked up, early 30s, confident, direct. "You're Matt, right?" she asked. "I just started at your old company. They don't stop talking about you." I nodded. "Yeah, I used to run point over there. They monitor all your moves now," she said, lowering her voice slightly. "Every time you post on LinkedIn, someone in leadership shares it internally. Pretty sure they've got alerts set." I didn't flinch, just shrugged. "They should." She gave me this tight smile, like she wasn't sure if I was joking. I wasn't. Because the truth is, they didn't just lose me, they built me. They forced me into the kind of clarity I'd been avoiding, burned every bridge I needed to stop crossing. Their failure became the fuel for something that actually worked. And now, I didn't owe them a thing. The woman in the navy blazer walked away, and I stood there for a second, letting the noise of the conference blur behind me. 6 months. That's how long it had been since the glass-walled ambush. Since they thought they could cut me out and keep the engine running. Now, Hyon's consulting division, my division, was the fastest growing part of the company. We'd landed 6 major clients in just under half a year. 3 Fortune 100s, 2 tech giants, and 1 federal contract still under NDA. My name was in Wired, InfoSec Digest, even a Forbes blurb about disruptive leadership. Clients weren't just calling for help. They were citing our resilience framework as the gold standard. Meanwhile, my old company was still untangling the mess they swore didn't exist. They'd stabilized the bleeding, sort of. But the damage? Permanent. 2 execs stepped down. Edison got quietly reassigned. They'd gone through 3 contractors trying to reverse engineer my patchwork. It wasn't sabotage, it was decay, and I'd just stopped holding it together. Back at Hyon, we threw a rooftop celebration. Nothing fancy, just good food, cold drinks, and the whole crew finally off the clock at the same time. Ellis, the guy who took over my Boston keynote schedule, raised his glass halfway through the night and shouted over the music. "To Matt, for proving the real win isn't revenge. It's building better." Everyone clinked their glasses, and for the first time in a long time, I actually felt it. Peace. Because he was right. I didn't torch my old company. I didn't leak data, crash systems, or play any backdoor games. I just walked out when the load became abuse, when respect turned to lip service, when promises stopped meaning anything. They did the rest to themselves. And that's what made it satisfying. Not the headlines, not the money, not even the bragging rights. The real victory? It was walking away with my head up and watching them chase what they threw away. What would you have done in Matt's shoes? Walk away or burn it down? Drop your answer in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.